concerned about that. We want to try to keep them open in fall. So there's a lot going on. I think that generally the news here with these commissioners is pretty good. As you know, Grays Harbor County is one of the 10 counties that the governor has allowed to seek these variances, which would allow them to basically waive out of Proclamation 2025, which is the state-owned, state-owned proclamation. And that's good. We'd like to see more than just 10 counties on that list. We'd like to see, well, really, we'd like to flip it. We think 10 counties probably shouldn't be on the list, and 27, 28, 29 should be able to opt out of that governor's proclamation. So we're working on that. But we take the 10 that we have for now and try to help those counties open things up. And that's a good thing. And each of the 3 commissioners here in Grays Harbor County, in their own way, has said that they want to try to get the county opened up. So we're glad to hear that. And I think in terms of talking with the commissioners here, your approach should be very positive. I mean, they're on the right track. They want to do the right thing. So let's just keep talking with them and encouraging them to go the right way and get the county open for business, get the county open for using county parks and county facilities, and all the things that are in the purview of these county commissioners to do. I think they want to do the right thing. Really, what we need is we need more than just those 10 counties. We need every county where there's been a minimal mortality effect of COVID to be able, at its choice, at its option, to open up to standard stuff, to life as we know it, to normal, and not some kind of new normal that isn't normal. We want the old normal, we want the normal normal. So again, I think in your dealings with the county here, I think it's in a good place. I think it doesn't have to be contentious. I think you can talk with them in a good way, a positive way, and encourage them to complete the opening that the governor's already given. What I encourage you to do is keep pressure on the governor at the state level. Keep the phone calls going into his office, keep the emails going into his email account. And even though the governor himself doesn't necessarily see these or hear these, that's okay. The staffers that work for the governor, they take into account what people are saying. They take into account the opinions of people. Now, even if they don't respond as quickly or as completely as we want, the idea here for the immediate time is the best tools we've got are pressure and persuasion. We can't change the Constitution and the law as it stands right now about the emergency declaration. So those are the cards we've got to deal with right now, the cards we've got to play, and we need to play them well. Now going forward, we want to revise some of the emergency declaration terms and how that works, and we want to make sure there's more checks and balances so that it's not just one person making all the decisions when something like this happens, so that the legislature, the voice of the people, has more of an active role, at least in encouraging or agreeing with emergency proclamations and extensions through time. And we want more clarity. The great problem that we've got right now with what the governor's doing is a lack of clarity. He's not clear on timelines. He's not clear on metrics. He's not clear on what constitutes success. When we started this all out, as you all know, the goal was to bend the curve so that hospitals didn't get overwhelmed with COVID patients. And actually there was a lot of agreement about that. But now it's changed. You know, the overwhelming wave of COVID patients that didn't come to the hospitals. And so that's a good thing. But now the goals have changed. Now the governor says it's not about bending the curve and keeping the hospitals from being overwhelmed. Now it's about control. It's about getting control of the virus. Well, that's a hard thing to define. We're not sure what control means, and we're not sure how long it would take to get control. So we want more clarity. We want to know exactly what the timeline is. We want to know what the measurable goals are of our public policy, and not loose talk about control or 24-hour response or things that aren't connected to real numbers of incidents, mortality, and the statistics that truly measure any kind of viral spread through a population. The great irony to where things have been in the last few decades is science is actually on our side here in this. Numbers, math, who's actually affected by the COVID disease and by the transmission rate of the coronavirus. These things are on the side of opening more to the public. And the clampdown, the lockdown, the people who advocate that, they don't have science on their side. They're playing largely on emotions, largely on fear, and you know, that's not a good way to run public policy. We think science and math is. And so we're going to look forward, as we go forward, to broadening that approach out. But for now, our best tools are that pressure and that persuasion. So stay engaged. Keep talking to your county commissioners here. Keep talking to the governor and your legislatures, me included, in Olympia. And keep that pressure on. But I think it can be, in the case of Grace Harbor County, a friendly persuasion. It doesn't have to be antagonistic. Because like I say, I think the impulses and the instincts of these electeds are good and looking for a good outcome. So keep it up, keep it going, and yeah, I'll take a couple questions.
What about the public health department?
Well,
Carolyn Holden's basically got control over everything. So it's her that doesn't want to push forward with opening up the county. So what do we do about the public health department?
well, the elected officials are the ones who ultimately make the decision here. So they can be swayed by their advisors, but the bureaucrats don't have any political power. The elected officials have political power. The elected officials are the ones who can make the decision. And remember, I mean, the state is so wonderful in this way. Really, the political power is with you. Our state constitution says right at the start, all political power is inherent in the people. And they delegate it to elected officials to do good for them.
They start listening to us. Yes.
Okay. The elected officials here, the sheriff and the 3 county commissioners, I believe, want the right thing. So keep the friendly pressure on them. And there's not much you can do about a bureaucrat, about a hired staff. But you can talk to the elected officials, and I would focus on them. Any other questions?
Yeah, any news on Joshua Freed's lawsuit?
Not yet, but I mean that's happening as we're talking right now. That hearing was supposed to start at 1:30. Travis is asking about one of the several lawsuits, particularly the one filed by Joshua Freed, which focuses on the restrictions on church activities under 2025 and other proclamations. That group, Freed, has a hearing right now, this afternoon. He's asked for a temporary restraining order, which would mean, for the moment, while his lawsuit is working its way through the courts, the presumption would shift from churches should be closed to churches should be open. And while the lawsuit is being resolved, if Freed gets the temporary order, churches could go back to normal. Now, they would need to honor safe spacing and masks if they choose to, and cleaning, disinfecting services. They would need to honor the safety precautions, but if the restraining order is issued by the court, you would be able to have services again open to the public at the church. And certainly the other middle steps would be available to churches, the ones that want to do it through cars and other compromise solutions. So those would all be open to churches if they have. There's no word yet. The judge is literally hearing the request right now.
When are they going to open up all fishing? You can't go to Westport, you can't do all the rivers are closed. The only place you can go is Lake Aberdeen. So when are they going to open up other fishing areas?
At this point, the governor has kind of delegated his position on it to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they're working on it, from what I understand, a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. So, again, friendly pressure on the Department of Fish and Wildlife and encourage them to open up recreational fishing everywhere. They have, as you know, in most of the state. They have just not done it here.
Do you feel like the variance that's to be applied for is even attainable for any of the counties that they offered it to?
Well, I think the counties can, that's a good question. I'm not sure. But really, that shouldn't be an issue. I think the counties can be aggressive in how they pursue the variance. And you are seeing some of the counties, not Grays Harbor yet, but some of the other counties in the state are being a little more aggressive in simply declaring that they're compliant and claiming the variance rather than just asking for the variance. So there is some concern that the terms, again, metrics, we talk about clarity and metrics and the lack of those things, that some of the measurements for qualifying for the variance may be a kangaroo court, maybe an impossible standard. And I can't speak to that with certainty because some counties are saying that they are compliant. But that's up to each county to decide. And certainly some counties are being more aggressive about it than others. So I would encourage every county to be aggressive in pursuit
So
of
who
the
then
variance.
do we friendly like pressure into opening us up and applying for that or saying?
The county commissioners.
Didn't Inslee say something that in order for the variances there had to be no new cases and stuff, and after he said that we had 2 new cases supposedly?
It's not clear exactly what the governor said.
Yeah,
he did say something that sounded like that.
Yeah.
He also said other things that said different, or at least implied different. So the governor's talking points aren't reliable for policy. But yes, that was one thing he sort of said, and that might be true or not. That's up for the county governments dealing with the state government to decide.
Then whenever he said that, then we had 2 new cases supposedly, and we don't even know if they're sitting at home. How silly, I mean, like the flu.
We don't have to worry about those stupid contact tracers coming around.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that. Ventura County in California yesterday announced to their population that they're going to be monitoring, testing, and if you are positive, they will be going to your house to visit daily to make sure in quarantine. If you have more than 3 or 4 people in your house with only 1 bathroom, they're talking about taking you out of your house and putting you in a camp for COVID or the China virus.
They also kind of talked
So,
about that here with the old Jimmy, didn't they?
They did. There's some talk of using Maple Lane over by Grand Mound as an isolation
Has
center.
Inslee
Well,
talked about
talk
that at
is
all?
fine.
Yeah.
What's the
Talk doesn't
repercussions
matter.
for not participating? The repercussions for not participating. What if you don't open your door?
Well, that's your prerogative to not open.
There's no trespassing sign in the driveway.
Can they bust your door in?
Yeah. Because they're technically not medical. They don't have purview to your medical information. They have no
No, they
rights
don't.
to it.
And you should be protected from sharing that information or having it shared for you under federal law, what they call the HIPAA, the Federal Medical Privacy Law. Talk is cheap, and talk from California is of little interest to me.
But we always follow California.
Yeah.
Always.
What we need to do is
Right.
focus on what actually
On the
happens. And the Department of Health can sketch out plans for isolation and quarantine, whatever. It is not my belief that any jurisdiction of competent authority, that means actual law enforcement with power, is going to enforce some of those kinds of scenarios. So we got to wait and see what happens, but I do not believe that any competent law enforcement entity would support it.
Do you feel confident saying that Governor Lyons exit with Chattanooga without the judge, without control, but then the governor and the AG stepped in and kind of rescued her?
Correct.
That should be a good sign for us.
I think it is. I think again, it's like California, it's like Texas. We're not California, we're not Texas, we're Washington. But it is a good sign. Yes, the general drift of that story. That was the salon keeper owner who, beautician, who opened up her shop and was harassed by some local authorities, and then the governor and the state AG had to come in and straighten things out. I think that is a good example, and thanks for bringing it up. the way we hope things will actually play out if they play out. That is, cooler heads will prevail. And let's see what happens. I don't think any competent law enforcement is going to be busting people's doors down or dragging them off to Maple Lane, which is, frankly, it's a prison. I mean, it's a form of penal law.
It's an internment camp.
I don't think any. I am confident that the sheriff of Grays Harbor County would not support that kind of activity. I know Rick Scott. I've known him for years. I do not believe he would support that kind of lawlessness.
We got
You got a good
barber
sheriff's
in
department.
North Seattle that they're screwing with.
And there's going to be some of that.
I'm here for everybody in the state, not just Grays Harbor County.
But that it's a risk that every business has to calculate. If it pushes the limits, if it decides to open for business, there are some risks that may come as consequence to that business. And we're watching particularly what Labor and Industries, the Department of Labor and Industries, what we call L&I, might do to a business that opens. We'll pay attention to what the Department of Licensing might do. An easy thing to do for something like a hairstylist or a beautician would be to pull their license because they're.
You know how many of us would still do hair?
But this is, again, it's a balancing act. We want to support people to open, but we want to respect the fact that those who don't open until they have cover from the local authorities are taking a risk, and we want to support common sense decisions, but we don't want to hang anybody out. I mean, we don't want to create legal liabilities or professional liabilities for people. Everyone has to make that decision for themselves, what they're comfortable doing. Just as, I believe, everyone needs to make the decision for themselves how they want to respond to the COVID risk. Yep. You need to decide for yourself whether you should stay home all the time or you should wear a mask, or you should be able to make these decisions for yourself and not have them forced on you. And this gets to contact tracing. If people do it voluntarily, that's fine. The concern I have is if this becomes mandatory.
Yeah, exactly.
And some employers may want to require contact tracing, and that's a private transaction between that employer and their employees. And if they want to do that, that's fine. It's only when the government starts mandating it that you run into trouble.
They have no repercussions to go back.
Who has the authority to pull a business license within the city?
There are different levels of authority. There are different entities that charge B&O tax, but primarily what I'm watching is the State Department of Licensing, which is the clearinghouse of professional licenses and business licenses.
So would a mayor have that jurisdiction for a business license?
There would, yes, but local jurisdictions, county or city, have the ability to enforce law as they see fit or use discretion in enforcing law. So, but I'm not worried about the mayors either. If I watch, it's because of where I'm at the state level, the legislature, I'm watching the state agencies. Those are the ones I'm most concerned about. I believe most of the local electeds in Grays Harbor County are common sense people, and they want the county to be open for business. So I'm not as concerned about the local authorities here as I am about the pressure being put on them from the state down.
I got one about my situation to many other people that have rentals. And now they're telling everybody they don't have to pay. And here these people are getting 60% of their unemployment. They're getting $1,200. They're buying flat screen TVs and saying I don't have to pay. I still have to pay my house payments, my insurance, my utilities.
That they haven't said you don't have to pay. What they've
That's
said
the way
is,
people are taking it.
I know, but that's not, you gotta be careful. That's not, the governance didn't
Like you
say
can't
you don't
evict
have
them
to
if they're not paying. They can't be evicted and all
evict.
that. So I wait 3 months, take them to court, get a judgment, then they don't pay, and then I gotta go to the next stage with a lawyer and stuff. By that time they move out and I'm just screwed. Meanwhile, I'm making my house payments and my bills.
That is correct. I was just at a Zoom meeting this morning with property managers and property owners here in the 19th district, and they're very upset about that. And in current, you can't even sue.
It's still
Courts
not
won't hear
technically
a
by itself.
They won't hear a detainer. No, you will be
Well,
after it's
they're
over,
cool,
but
yeah.
under the current
Yeah,
setup,
you can't do anything.
you can't even begin the process.
You want me to do it?
It's like me with my clean and sober house, and people are even saying you can't even kick us out if we use because you
I'll
can't
get
kick us
some
out. Just like
coffee.
they saw that what happened to the homeless camp, they couldn't kick them out. So now they're saying, well, I could use, you can't kick
Oh,
me
it
out.
seems like it's working. Yeah, but it just clicked all by
That
itself.
isn't true, but that's the trouble with
Yeah.
these proclamations is they're
Worded
articulated in a vague way,
Worded
loosely,
loosely, yes.
and so people interpret them kind of however they want. You know, we got to be careful when 2025 is finally lifted, and when the underlying emergency declaration is finally lifted. We're not going to be out of the woods yet, because that's when people are going to be due with all the rents they haven't paid, with mortgages they haven't paid, and that's going to be when the real financial pain is. You know, if people spent their stimulus money foolishly, we're going to get to the other side of this, and they're going to owe 3 months of rent, and then they can be evicted, and they're not going to have the money to pay 3 months of rent. So I'm concerned there too about what the state's going to do to try to smooth that transition, and that's why I believe the governor needs to listen, not just to people like me who you elect, but he needs to listen to all of you. And so keep up the phone calls, keep up the meetings. Even though it might feel like it doesn't do any good,
It
it
does feel a
does
little
good.
trivial. Is it working?
I think it is. I mean, look at what happened first with the real estate industry, which was completely shut down, and then we were able to open it up a little bit. Look at what happened with construction, where we're getting some elements of construction freed up to go back to work. Look at what we did get, perfect as it is, with hunting and fishing, which was completely shut down, and now at least it's more open, not as far as we want, but more. Look at what we're starting to get with the hospitals, where that silly proclamation we did that said hospitals couldn't do what they call elective surgeries or procedures, had the unintended effect of actually closing hospitals down.
Yeah.
And Grays Harbor
Cool.
community over in Aberdeen had to lay off nurses and staff because they were worried there was going to be the wave of COVID patients. That didn't come, and then they were shut down from doing, knee surgeries and shoulders and things that frankly keep the hospital going, because that's their business. So we got some relief there. We're asking for greater clarity from the governor in timelines and metrics on his 4 phases, and we're not there yet. That's kind of the current one we're pressing on. We're asking him to commit to a timeline, hard timeline, real dates, and commit to measurable metrics, so we understand. Not just if anything happens, then no, we need to see a scale. If there are new cases documented, if there are deaths, we need to see a real scale of what qualifies in different stages. And like I said, more than anything, what I'm personally pressing their office on right now is let's get more counties on that list. It's got to be more than 10. I'd like to see it be 20 or 25.
Does it make any sense that the 10 are there? I mean, there are so many other counties that have 0 or none, and then they're
Now, initially they said it was all counties under 50,000, except guess what? Grays Harbor has more than 50,000. So it was not really well thought out. It was put together.
My last question.
Sure.
There's no camping, and the parks are supposed to be closed at a certain time now, right?
You can go for a day trip, but you can't stay overnight.
Right, so why is it okay for the homeless to set up 6 tents down at Morrison Park? And nothing's done about that?
Well, that's not
In a
okay.
park that should be closed, and they're camping, and there's a no camping ordinance.
Yeah. But let's keep focused on issues that really fall under COVID. The trouble with that one is that issue's been around before COVID. And the problems there are
But we're
not
not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. We're not allowed to go camp right now. We're not allowed to sit in the park overnight right now because of COVID. Why are they?
Yeah.
because of some squishy policy choices that local jurisdictions made years ago. In that case, that is a local. You talk about a mayor, Travis, and that is one where you probably want to talk to a city council member or a mayor.
They won't listen.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
We can organize a camp out and camp right next to them and make s'mores.
I like that idea.
I'm
Yeah, me
totally
too.
down.
Yep.
I'll befriend them. Give them some
interruption, which we
treatment materials.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about food. And the
do.
food supply chains, which are very intricate and kind of delicate. If you screw up delivery of chicken or pork, it's easy for there to be waves of trouble for months to come afterward. And what we saw in some cases is a couple of processing centers, not local that I'm aware of, but in the state and in the part of the U.S. that have been shut down because of COVID outbreaks at the food processing plants. And we had a couple of cases confirmed down in Kelso at the Tyson chicken plant, but they haven't shut that down. They've quarantined and taken some measures. Only
Idaho.
temporarily.
Yeah, a couple days.
So they didn't long-term shut it down. So that shouldn't affect chicken market availability of chicken in the area. But the couple of days that they are shut down, some of these others have been shut down for longer times. That'll start showing up in less pork or beef or chicken on the shelves in stores. Everyone's aware of that. At the federal level, they've taken extraordinary measures to demand that processing plants stay open. At the state level, we haven't done that yet. The conventional wisdom is, and I've talked to the people at Tyson Chicken down in Kelso, they don't think that they need any government action. They just want to be able to stay mostly open and make accommodations so their employees don't get sick. So I think that those are good concerns. The best information I have currently, and that includes from Tyson Foods, is that we're okay. And that you may see some shortages on your shelves, as you saw with the toilet paper and other things, but that generally the flow of food is going to be okay. But keep your eye on it. I mean, if you know, we're all an undiscovered country, something stranger could happen. All right, anything else? Well, thanks for showing up. I see Joel McIntyre is here. Joel, you want to say a few?
Sure.
Joel McIntyre.
Thank you, Jim.
So I'm Joel McIntyre. I hail from the mighty Wahkiakum County. So it's about as big as from that block to over there. So it's pretty small. But I'm running for state representative for our 19th district. In position 2, I'm running against Representative Brian Blake. I'm going to take a seat in November. So.
Yes.
Woohoo!
I've had some thoughts lately. I'm kind of a fan of ancient history and ancient warfare, and something I think that I've seen and studied in warfare kind of applies today, and it is to do with body armor. That ever since humans started engaging in fighting, they realized that if they protected themselves with materials, that they could make it through a battle. And if you have more survivors from a battle, you can fight another day. But then a problem happened as you started to add more armor. You started to get clunky and you couldn't move. You weren't very mobile or agile. And so they said, well, we put on too much armor because the people aren't dying, but they also can't fight. They can't fight. So then they started taking some armor away. And then they started getting hurt, so there's this bounce back and forth between battles. So all throughout history where armor is being upgraded and downgraded based on the ability to protect an individual. And although everyone agrees that armor is important, where people disagree is on how much armor is needed for a particular battle in a particular position. Now there's a similar doctrine that happens in political science with security and liberties. That